So there's this guitar store in London's Denmark Street that currently has a very unique offering in terms of used Oasis and Noel Gallagher gear. It's the same place where I have my Noel Gallagher Pedalboard from, and they have some very cool other items that I'd like to document in this video. Yeah, and I would say let's jump right in and let's see what they have. So this is the landing page here. As you can see, Oasis Touring and Recording Collection. This is the collection we're interested in. They have many different sort of collections there. You can find them at denmarkstreetonline.co.uk, and I have picked out some very cool and unique items that us Oasis and Noel gearheads might be interested in. Yeah? So as you can see, they have multiple different listing, also a bit of random stuff like this Maggie Thatcher bottle opener. Yeah, I think it's quite funny. But I picked out the first item here. There are many items of that, yeah, all for different songs. It's actually laminated lyric sheets, right? And if you've seen the last Oasis tour, like the Dig Out Your Soul tour in 2008 and 2009, Noel always had this note stand here with lyrics on it. I always assumed they were lyrics, but actually now we know they were lyrics. And there are like those laminated lyric sheets for Shock of the Lightning, Falling Down, Morning Glory, all the songs they played during the tour. I think it's actually very interesting to see or to actually find out what those sheets were actually. Yeah. Okay, there are multiple different sheets of lyrics here, and you can browse through them at your own pace. I'm just showing Shock of the Lightning here because that's the first one that came up. So next up, this is really cool and really interesting. We can get a lot of information out of that. Those are Oasis and Noel Gallagher set lists. Now, most of the songs you probably already know that were played during the tour, also during the rehearsals maybe. But I'm particularly interested in this rehearsal set list here. As you can see, it is dated at August 2011. Now, if we jump to Wikipedia for a moment, we can see all the information on the first High Flying Birds tour. And actually, the tour started only in October, at the 23rd of October 2011. So a rehearsal set list dated to August 2011, right? This was like the pre-tour rehearsal set list. And we see here also a typical set list from the High Flying Birds tour. You have the two acoustic songs here, Wonderwall and Supersonic, as well as Spaceman, yeah, and all the typical stuff here, Simple Game of Genius, I think this was only played a few times, Stranded on the Wrong Beach, and so on and so forth. But what caught my attention here were actually a few things. First of all, Wonderwall was not listed as an acoustic song here. Instead of Wonderwall, they actually tried to do Morning Glory. Right? They actually tried Morning Glory that Noel presumably played with the J150. And how cool would it have been if actually Morning Glory acoustic was played instead of Wonderwall? I would have been a big fan of that. If we go ahead, we find also something that's pretty interesting. Listen Up. I think Listen Up was never played during the first High Flying Birds tour. It was added later in the Chasing Yesterday tour, but that was a completely different set list, of course. And if we go to the extra songs here, right? Stranded on the Wrong Beach was actually played by Noel during the rehearsals with the Gibson SG. Now, you may or may not know that Stranded on the Wrong Beach was recorded with a Gibson SG, right? You can see it here. I have it here open on YouTube. That's the making of Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. There he plays, for a few frames, he plays the Gibson SG. And I would assume this guitar would have been used during the rehearsal. Now, If we go back, yeah, and of course Stranded on the Wrong Beach, this was added to the final tour set list, and it was played either on the 345 or the 355. Yeah. Now the last song, Married with Children, also a song he never played. I think he never played during the High Flying Birds tour. And I think also this would have been performed with a Gibson 355, so with his Gibson 355. So an electric version of Married with Children, which I think is quite unique, quite cool, and I would have loved to see it during the tour. But yeah, maybe in some future concert we can see also Married with Children played on the 355. Next up, I picked out two more items. They are the THD hot plates. Now they're actually amplifier attenuators. In a nutshell, what they do, it's quite simple. They reduce the volume of driven tube amplifiers. Now, if you crank up a tube amplifier, they can be quite loud, even louder than you would need on a stage, especially with 100-watt high watts that Noel used. And therefore you plug in this device between the amplifier and the speaker, and you can reduce then the loudness of the amplifier, so to say. Now this blue one, as it says here in the title, this is for Vox amplifier, his Vox amplifier, yeah, which produced a 16 ohm load. And you can see that here, yeah, here in the middle there's the Vox AC50. Check out that Pedal Show's video for more detail on that. And that was actually connected to a blue 16 ohm THD hot plate. Now moving over, they have another THD hot plate. This one's a purple one that would take an 8 ohm load. And this was used famously during, I think during the last Oasis tour, the God You Soul one, where he connected the Blues Junior as well as the high watt 100-watt vertical combo, as well as the high watt custom 50 or the high watt high gain 100 or 50 watt amplifier during the High Flying Birds tour. And this would have looked something like that. Here there's actually Noel's amp rig. I think we can get a clearer picture here where he used those attenuators. So before we jump to the next two items, let's first have a look at Noel's Dig Out Your Soul pedalboard. And there were actually two pedal boards. You had a mic stand in the middle and two independent pedal boards on either side of the mic stand, which is quite cool. And they also have those pedal boards here, right? They have the left pedal board, or at least one similar model to that, yeah? With professional gigs and professional touring, you would always have spares and backups of everything. And this would have been the left side. And the right side, this is a smaller pedal board, even has the labels here. As you can see here, it says Rock and Roll Baby, right? And if you have a listen to Rock and Roll Star, the end of Rock and Roll Star, during the Dig Out Your Soul tour, you can actually hear this voice saying, "That's rock and roll, baby, that's rock and roll, baby," right? And this sound came from one of Noel's amplifiers. And this sample that you could actually hear at the end of Rock and Roll Star during the Dig Out Your Soul tour actually came from a pedal on Noel's board. And this pedal was called the CVEX Lo-Fi Loop Junkie. You could load the sample into that pedal, and that pedal could then repeatedly replay that, loop that through one of Noel's amplifiers. What's also quite interesting is, if we jump back to the left-hand side pedal board, this was later, so after Oasis, this was actually used by Tim Smith, Noel's second guitarist, during the first two tours, before Gam Archer rejoined Noel with the High Flying Birds. And you could actually see that during one concert of Tim Smith. So this is Tim Smith here, right beside Noel, and he used that board that Noel used during the last Oasis tours, or at least one of the boards. Yeah? And this was even labeled here because Tim Smith used a high watt amp as well as a Vox AC30. You could still see the AC30 logo here, which I think is quite interesting. Now, next over, the Blues Junior, the famous Fender Blues Junior, and now this is like a standard issue Fender Blues Junior used by Noel Gallagher on stage. But what's the most interesting part here is actually the settings. So one could not simply see the settings by looking at the Blues Junior on stage, because the controls are on top of the amplifier, and there's at least 1 or 2 forum threads that ask about Fender Blues Junior settings for Noel, and at least for the High-Flying Birds we now know the settings, and those are actually the exact settings that I've dialed in on my Blues Junior right behind me. And if you want to actually hear a Blues Junior with those settings, well, check out my Oasis and Noel Gallagher covers, because there I play a Blues Junior together with a hi-watt with the exact same settings as Noel has. Alright, next up, speaking of the hi-watt, Noel's famous Audio Brothers hi-watt vertical amplifier is also for sale here. Yeah, this is a very early one produced by Audio Brothers, who were in charge of hi-watt during the 90s, I guess. Yeah. And yeah, this amplifier, yeah, maybe one day I'll own something like that, but it's just currently it's very unreasonable to buy. Yeah, but it still has some spare fuses here, 4-amp fuse, 1-amp fuse. And yeah, this was used by Noel famously throughout the noughties. So before we actually jump to the next item, we have a look at the picture from the Networth shows, and Noel was always known to play multiple different kinds of amplifiers on stage during the 90s, especially during the 90s. Here, for example, at Networth you had a Marshall JCM 800 or 900 in the center, and that was supported by 2 Marshall Blues Breaker style amplifiers to the right, as well as to the left the 2 WEM combo amplifiers. And I would always ask myself, well, how were they splitting the signal? Is this a wet-dry rig or whatever? Yeah, and I'm 99.9% sure that this was not a wet-dry rig. All the effects from a small board back then would actually go to every amplifier, and on stage you could just hear this wall of sound produced by all the amplifiers running in parallel. And I think such a device that they have here was used, it even says, yeah, 1990s, and it's labeled the double fucking posh splitter here. And this device was made to receive one signal either from the guitar or from the pedal board, and then split it out to 6 outputs, which then you could hook up to 6 different amplifiers. Yeah? Just like Noel had in Main Road, or even the Be Here Now tour era, he had multiple different amplifiers there, Voxes, Matchless amps, Marshalls of course, yeah, and also the famous Networth gigs. So while there's no specific era mentioned here, it just says 90s, I would assume something like this was used during Main Road and also during Networth. So, if you're interested in this kind of stuff here, please check out Denmark Street Guitars at denmarkstreetonline.co.uk. As I said, I have no affiliation with them. I just like to document stuff like that while it's around, floating around on the web. Yeah, maybe you can also discover 1 or 2 things that I didn't mention in my video. Please mention them down in the comment. As I've said, I always like engaging with you guys and find like-minded Noel gearheads. And yeah, so that concludes my video today. I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.